Silakan kalau ada yang masih mau cek sound. Terima kasih.
Regulasi berperan penting sebagai instrumen yang mengatur iklim ekonomi suatu negara. Kebijakan-kebijakan yang dibuat para pejabat publik berpengaruh pada dinamika kesejahteraan masyarakat. Namun, kebijakan yang kurang tepat dapat menghambat dunia usaha dalam memanfaatkan peluang pasar dan dapat mengancam daya saing global. Menurut data Ease of Doing Business, peringkat kemudahan berusaha di Indonesia belum berada pada posisi yang diharapkan. Regulasi yang tumpang tindih dan berlebihan dinilai menjadi jerat dari regulasi itu sendiri. Oleh karena itu, Presiden Joko Widodo menginstruksikan bahwa setiap pengambilan keputusan wajib mengacu pada analisis dampak kebijakan. Para pejabat publik diminta untuk lebih berorientasi pada peluang pasar sehingga keamanan lingkungan dan sosial dapat terlindungi. Lalu bagaimana memperoleh analisis dampak kebijakan atau ADK yang baik? Ada 3 komponen pembentuk ADK untuk diperhatikan oleh perumus kebijakan. Pertama, perlu komitmen yang kuat dari perumus kebijakan. Kedua, adanya kelembagaan pendukung yang efektif sebagai upaya optimalisasi kualitas regulasi. Kelembagaan pendukung yang dimaksud adalah adanya quality control dan pengawasan. Dan yang ketiga adalah perlu adanya metode atau alat yang efektif untuk mengontrol kualitas regulasi. Tujuannya yaitu untuk memastikan aturan yang dibuat berlangsung efektif dan efisien. Dalam pembuatan ADK, perlu adanya langkah-langkah untuk memastikan regulasi yang terbit memiliki alasan. 7 langkah ADK dimulai dari merumuskan masalah, merumuskan tujuan, merumuskan alternatif pilihan, menganalisis manfaat dan biaya, menetapkan pilihan, menyusun strategi implementasi, dan terakhir adalah dalam setiap tahapan kegiatan ADK perlu adanya konsultasi dari stakeholders serta publikasi atas rancangan ADK. Sebab, aspek penting dari ADK adalah adanya pertimbangan alternatif, proses pembuatan yang transparan, dan keterlibatan masyarakat dalam penyusunannya. Dengan demikian, regulasi yang dihasilkan memiliki kualitas yang lebih baik. Regulasi berperan penting sebagai instrumen yang mengatur iklim ekonomi suatu negara. Kebijakan-kebijakan yang dibuat para pejabat publik berpengaruh pada dinamika kesejahteraan masyarakat. Namun, kebijakan yang kurang tepat dapat menghambat dunia usaha dalam memanfaatkan peluang pasar dan dapat mengancam daya saing global. Menurut data Ease of Doing Business, peringkat kemudahan berusaha di Indonesia belum berada pada posisi yang diharapkan. Regulasi yang tumpang tindih dan berlebihan dinilai menjadi jerat dari regulasi itu sendiri. Oleh karena itu, Presiden Joko Widodo menginstruksikan bahwa setiap pengambilan keputusan wajib mengacu pada analisis dampak kebijakan. Para pejabat publik diminta untuk lebih berorientasi pada peluang pasar sehingga keamanan lingkungan dan sosial dapat terlindungi. Lalu bagaimana memperoleh analisis dampak kebijakan atau ADK yang baik? Ada 3 komponen pembentuk ADK untuk diperhatikan oleh perumus kebijakan. Pertama, perlu komitmen yang kuat dari perumus kebijakan. Kedua, adanya kelembagaan pendukung yang efektif sebagai upaya optimalisasi kualitas regulasi. Kelembagaan pendukung yang dimaksud adalah adanya quality control dan pengawasan. Dan yang ketiga adalah perlu adanya metode atau alat yang efektif untuk mengontrol kualitas regulasi. Tujuannya yaitu untuk memastikan aturan yang dibuat berlangsung efektif dan efisien. Dalam pembuatan ADK, perlu adanya langkah-langkah untuk memastikan regulasi yang terbit memiliki alasan. 7 langkah ADK dimulai dari merumuskan masalah, merumuskan tujuan, merumuskan alternatif pilihan, menganalisis manfaat dan biaya, menetapkan pilihan, menyusun strategi implementasi, dan terakhir adalah dalam setiap tahapan kegiatan ADK perlu adanya konsultasi dari stakeholders serta publikasi atas rancangan ADK. Sebab, aspek penting dari ADK adalah adanya pertimbangan alternatif, proses pembuatan yang transparan, dan keterlibatan masyarakat dalam penyusunannya. Dengan demikian, regulasi yang dihasilkan memiliki kualitas yang lebih baik.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the International Workshop on Regulatory Improvement. This workshop is held by the Ministry of Agriculture, Republic Indonesia, supported by ANSLIC, a project funded by Global Affairs Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ocha Hafifa, and today I will be accompanying you as the MC throughout the event. Ladies and gentlemen, to ensure a smooth run event, there are also some rules that we would want you to know. Bapak Ibu, dalam workshop ini kami mempunyai fitur interpretasi. Silahkan klik interpretation, logonya berbentuk seperti bola dunia, untuk mendengarkan penerjemahan. Untuk mendengarkan terjemahan bahasa Indonesia, silahkan pilih Japanese. Jika Anda mengakses Zoom melalui smartphone atau handphone, klik tombol More yang berada di kanan bawah. Lalu klik Language Interpretation, kemudian pilih Japanese atau English. Lalu silahkan klik Done. Bapak dan Ibu, mohon memilih salah satu channel, baik Japanese atau English. Dan berbicara sesuai dengan channel tersebut agar tidak mengganggu penerjemahan. Ladies and gentlemen, in this workshop, we have a feature called interpretation. If you'd like to listen in English, please click interpretation icon that looks like a globe. Then click English and then click Done. If you use a smartphone, the interpretation icon is inside the More icon. Then you can find interpretation and then click your preference language and click Done. Ladies and gentlemen, there are also some other rules applied in this workshop. Number 1, during the webinar, attendees may ask questions by clicking the Q&A icon. Number 2, write your questions and send link. Number 3, you may also see other questions. If you like the question, please click like. Number 4, the question with the highest votes and likes will go to the top of the question list and will be most likely picked and answered by the moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, however, there is still some other house rules during the Zoom meeting. Number 1, please register and enter the Zoom meeting through the link appeared. Number 2, when entering Zoom call, click Join Audio or Join over Internet Call. Number 3, please access Zoom from the stable internet network. Number 4, make sure there is no background noise. Number 5, avoid accessing Zoom nearby other users because it may cause echo or feedback noise. Number 6, if there is any issues, please contact the committee or the host. Ladies and gentlemen, the guideline on how to access the interpretation feature will be sent to the chat box. And I'd like to also remind you to fill in the list of the attendance through the link that will be sent through the chat box. And with those rules applied, we're hoping that the workshop will run smoothly. Ladies and gentlemen, in this webinar, we will discuss about good practices and lessons learned concerning regulatory practices from international organizations, OECD and ABD, and experiences from several countries. This is a crucial theme considering that poor regulations slows down the absorption of the government budget, which in turn disrupts the economic at large. In Indonesia, there has been massive deregulation, yet there are still many obstacles in implementing the regulatory reform. The need to change simple, orderly, and sustainable regulation is significant, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Several objectives that we would want to achieve at the end of the webinar are, number 1, to share ideas, inputs, good practices, and lessons learned among countries and institutions on the government regulatory institutions. Regulatory approach, which are in the development and improvement of regulatories. Principles to guide good regulatory governance, coordination across regulatory makers, ministries, agencies, and etc. Number 2, to discuss the potential collaboration and sharing expertise among participatory countries or institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, to officially open the workshop, we would like to listen to the opening remarks. Today, we are honored to have the Honorable His Excellencies Mr. Cameron MacKay as the Ambassador of Canada for Indonesia. To the Excellency Mr. Cameron MacKay, please, time is yours.
Selamat pagi. Thank you for that introduction. Excellencies, Bapak Syahrul Yassin Limpo, Minister of Agriculture, Dr. Aladdin D. Rillo, Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN, honorable speakers, Bapak dan Ibu. I'm honored to represent the Government of Canada at this meeting this morning, and many thanks in particular to the Ministry of Agriculture for this kind invitation to participate. Canada's truly very pleased to support the Ministry's efforts to improve and strengthen regulatory processes. As public service professionals, we all know how critical it is that governments develop and implement quality regulations based on transparent consultations that promote sustainable and inclusive development for the long-term benefit of our citizens. Like Canada, Indonesia is a large and complex country with multiple agencies at national and subnational levels. We know this very well from our own experience. And so we know that coordination among these agencies is key to avoid overlapping or even contradictory regulations that can deter business investment. So it's exciting to see the Minister of Agriculture and the Ministry showing such leadership on good regulatory practice, including on conducting a regulatory impact assessment before drafting a regulation, and on consulting all stakeholders on the possible impacts before implementation. As we will discuss a little bit later this morning, government and lawmakers also need to review regulations over time to ensure that they still meet their original intended objectives and to update them as required. I'm also pleased to see colleagues from other ASEAN countries here today. I think we all know that governments also need to collaborate and consult international partners on regulations that may impact various international agreements and commitments that our countries have made, including those with ASEAN and of course with the World Trade Organization. To conclude, let me say that Canada is committed to continuing its long-standing partnership with Indonesia, including on good governance to support Indonesia's long-term development agenda. I wish all of today's participants a fruitful discussion, and I trust that we can all learn and benefit from each other's experiences in developing regulations. Terima kasih, thank you, merci beaucoup.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much, Mr. Cameron MacKay, for such an insightful speech. Today, we also would like to hear some words from the Honorable Dr. Pham Quang Minh, as the Assistant Director and Head of the Food, Agriculture, and Forestry Division of ASEAN Economic Community. To Dr. Pham Quang Minh, please, the time is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? A very good morning. His Excellency Syahrul Yassin Limpo, Minister of Agriculture, Republic of Indonesia. His Excellency Cameron MacKay, Canadian Ambassador for Indonesia. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First, allow me to express my deepest appreciation for having me here today for the international workshops on regulatory improvement. Also, allow me to convey sincere apology from Dr. Aladdin D. Rillo, Deputy Secretary General of ASEAN, who is not able to join this important event due to his prior commitment with the ASEAN member state. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN cooperation in the agriculture and food sectors date back as early as 1968, with cooperation in food production and supply. In 1977, the scope of cooperation was broadened to include the greater areas of ASEAN cooperation in food, agriculture, and forestry, as the needs has been increased. Currently, the specific areas under the ASEAN cooperation in food, agriculture, and forestry includes different aspects such as food security, food safety, halal food, crops, livestock, fishery, agricultural training extension, agricultural cooperative, and soil cooperation in agriculture and forest product promotion scheme. You may wish to note that one of the most important documents is the Food, Agriculture, and Forestry Cooperation is a strategic plan for ASEAN cooperation in food, agriculture, and forestry for 10 years, 2016 and 2025. These strategic plans also define a vision and goals for the food and agriculture and forestry cooperation in ASEAN region. The strategic plans also identifies and prioritize the main areas for cooperation and also propose a strategic trust and action programs in the region for 10 years. It is formulated in a global and regional context and in response to the socio-economic change driven by the three key drivers, including the rapid economic growth, regional integration and globalization, and pressures on natural resources. To implement the strategic plan for ASEAN cooperation in food, agriculture, and forestry 2016 and 2025, a number of documents and policy has been discussed and agreed by the ASEAN member states. To name a few, ASEAN Integrated Food Security Framework, ASEAN Regional Guidelines on Food Security and Nutrition, and ASEAN Guidelines on Promoting Responsible Investment in Food, Agriculture, and Forestry sectors. The ASEAN Secretariat and ASEAN member states are fully aware of the importance of the effective, efficient, and good regulatory practices that need to support the successful implementation of the strategic plans for ASEAN cooperation in food, agriculture, and forestry 2016 and 2025 to achieve its goals set by the ASEAN member states, among others, ensuring food security, food safety, and better nutrition in the region, deepening regional integration, and enhancing access to the global markets. During the preparation of these documents, several steps need to be considered. Let me share with you some points during the process of preparing and developing ASEAN guidelines or policy on food and agriculture. You may wish to know that the ASEAN Secretariat is responsible for working with the ASEAN member states and of course with the different partners and dialogue partners. In case of ASEAN member state, our partner is a senior official meeting on agriculture and forestry. So some of you also know that this is a SOM-AMAF. The Food, Agriculture, and Forestry Division of the ASEAN Secretariat is in charge of working with the SOM-AMAF on agriculture-related matters. Once there is a need for developing the ASEAN policies or guidelines, the ASEAN Secretariat also needs to conduct an initial assess or analysis on the suggested policies or guidelines to make sure that they are in line with the vision and strategic plans for ASEAN cooperation in food, agriculture, and forestry 2016 and 2025. If they are also in line with the vision and strategic plan, the ASEAN Secretariat also work with the SOM-AMAF and relevant working groups under SOM-AMAF to draft the suggested policies or guidelines. During this period, consultation with the relevant stakeholders, such as international organizations, research institutes, or private sectors, will be conducted to make sure that the suggested policy or guideline will support the relevant stakeholder in ASEAN. The consultation process, for me, I think that is very important to make sure the suggested policies or guideline meets the need of the region, as well as ensure the expected level of impacts of the new policy or guideline for ASEAN. Once agreed by the relevant working groups and the SOMAMAF, the suggested policy or guideline will be submitted to the ASEAN Minister on Agriculture and Forestry, here we call AMAF, for endorsement and implementation. So we know that AMAF will be held every year, one time per year, and usually is set in October of the years. And in 2021, the AMAF meeting will be held in Indonesia. This policy and guideline, which has been adopted by the ASEAN Minister on Agriculture and Forestry, will be subjected to reviews or revise as necessary. In this connection, I'd like to highlight that the multi-stakeholder engagement process by bringing together the government agencies, private sectors and public sectors, producers, civil society to share experiences, to discuss challenges and opportunities, and to establish the consensus on the suggested policy or guideline. We plays a key role for the successful implementation of the new policy at the regional levels. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are very pleased to know that the objective of these workshops are to share inputs, ideas, and to learn good regulatory practices from the other country, from the international organizations and institutions who have good experiences in the regulatory reform. I do hope our key speakers today will have all participants further understand on the government's regulation approach, including the development and improvements of the regulations, principles to guide good regulatory governance and coordination across the different policy makers, ministries, and agencies. With that, I'd like to thank you and conclude my remarks, and I wish you a productive and meaningful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for the opening remarks. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are honored today to have His Excellency Dr. Syahrul Limpo, SHMH, joining us today, but unfortunately, he's still on his way to the workshop. But so we will now take a picture first without His Excellency the Minister, but later on we will take another picture once he's arrived. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing more beautiful than creating memories. Hence why we'd like to take a picture together with all of the panelists at this workshop today. Please turn on your camera and get ready for the picture. The picture will be taken by Mr. Tafsan, and please wait until Mr. Tafsan says that. Mr. Tafsan, please.
Siap. Ready? 1, 2. Wait, I'm going to give it a bit layout. 1, 2, and Ibu Melissa, are you ready? 1, 2, and 3. Later, we are going to have another photo when His Excellency the Minister arrive. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much to all of the officials and the panelists. Now, to begin to the workshop, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give the stage to the Honorable Ms. Natalie Leonhardt as the Senior Manager, Local Regional Economic Development at Cowater International as the moderator. To Ms. Natalie Leonhardt, please, the time and stage is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Ocha. His Excellency, the Ministry of Agriculture will join us soon. So we will have a break anytime when the Minister is here to give opportunity to His Excellency to speak. So good morning, Excellencies, distinguished speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. The participants will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's key speakers or panelists by texting or writing your questions into the Q&A box in your Zoom screen. So you may send in your questions at any time during the presentations, and our team, Ibu Frida and Pak Maulana, will collect those questions and I will address them during the Q&A session today to the speakers. So now please allow me to introduce you to our panelists. Today we are honored to have 5 key speakers, and they are first, Mr. Shingo Kimura. Mr. Shingo Kimura is the Senior Natural Resources and Agriculture Specialist. He is representing the Asian Development Bank Manila headquarters, the East Asia Department. Good morning and thank you for joining us, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, yes. The second, we have Yusek Rodolfo Visera from Department of Agriculture, the Philippines. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us. He's not online yet. So next we have Professor Edmund Tayao. Professor Edmund Tayao has been engaged most of his professional life on policy work. His areas are mainly on political and administrative reforms. As such, he has worked in various countries, especially in Southeast Asia, Africa, and Europe. So he served as the youngest member of the Consultative Committee to review the 1987 Constitution, the Constitutional Commission that drafted a new constitution for the Philippines. He is also a faculty member at the Ateneo School of Government and Executive Director of the Local Government Development Foundation, Logoda Philippines. Good morning, Professor Edmund. Thank you for joining us.
Magandang umaga. Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi. I can see here the Philippines connections. Yeah, we have ADB Manila headquarters, Department of Agriculture Philippines, Logoda Philippines. So I guess you might know each other, probably. So, and the next panelist I will introduce, he's also have Philippines background, study background, I mean, Professor Erizal Jamal, the director of the Indonesia Center for Plant Variety Protection and Agricultural Permits, Ministry of Agriculture Indonesia. Selamat pagi, Professor. Thank you for joining us. Selamat pagi, Professor Erizal.
Selamat pagi semuanya.
Selamat pagi. And next we're honored to have Dr. Mike Fisher. Sorry, I might pronounce your name wrong, sir. Dr. Mike Fisher.
It was perfect.
Yeah, okay, thank you. The Senior Policy Analyst, Regulatory Policy Division, Public Governance Directorate, OECD Indonesia Country Office. Good morning, Pak Mike. Selamat pagi.
Good morning. I'm actually really honored to be here because I'm actually dialing in from Paris, so it's really good morning.
Okay. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Thank you for joining us today. We recognize the important works of OECD, more specifically on good regulatory practices. So looking forward to listen to your presentation and to discuss with you later on. All right, now we will begin the presentation. First, we welcome Mr. Shingo Kimura from ADB headquarters. Mr. Kimura, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Ambassador McKay and Dr. Min. Very pleased to be in this workshop, and thank you very much for inviting ADB to this important meeting. Really, thank you for the Ministry of Agriculture in Indonesia. So today, I'm going to talk about some of the good practice in regulatory improvement and its implementation in the agriculture sector. As you know, that the ADB has been very much focused on the investment activities in the regions, but it's more and more we are required to give support to this institutional and governance and regional cooperation aspect. So that's why I think this topic is very important for us. So just want to start from background why this regulatory reform is important in agriculture, particularly. We think there are two aspects, both domestic, international. For domestic side, you see that development agriculture these days is more and more service oriented. It's not only agriculture production itself, but supply to the agriculture sector and the distributions, marketing is becoming more and more important in the sector. And secondly, there's integration with other sectors, food processing, of course, but all other sectors becoming more important in terms of the driving innovations. And I come back to this point later. And third, of course, agriculture need more private investment. It has been very much led by the government in many countries, but it's definitely agriculture need more private sector investment. On the international side, we all know there are domestic regulations exist, and they are all good reasons for environmental, social, marketing perfections, but it all lead to some of the non-tariff barriers. So that's also some cost in terms of trade. And this cost of trade may prevent domestic agriculture industry to integrate with evolving global value chain. So there's two aspects there. So I'm going to cover all this in my presentations. So as I said, the agriculture become more service oriented. This is some of the data actually from OECD that in the global value chain. And if you look at the agriculture sector and food manufacturing sectors, more and more value are added from the service sector. If you even in the agriculture sector, this figure shows the how much value at final consumption stage are added by which sector. So, of course, in agriculture, more than half of the value are added by agriculture sector itself. But domestic service industries has increasingly adding values, like US or Australia. Close to 30% of the value of agriculture products are added by service sectors. And of course, in food manufacturing sector, role of service sector become important. So, and then the regulations, not only in agriculture, but in service sectors or other sectors are affecting all those integrations with other sectors. So, as I said, these innovations and entrepreneurship is very much a key in the future development of agriculture and also rural development in general. And the trend we see is that innovations in agricultural sector is increasingly dependent on technology developed outside the sector. Of course, we hear a lot about the digital agriculture. That's a lot of technology coming from ICT sectors. And we have a lot of innovations coming from genomics, medical science, all those biotechnologies that is not traditionally agriculture research. So that's why it's very important for the agriculture to increase its linkage, integration with other sectors. So probably the sector-specific regulation, if some regulations are separating agriculture from other sectors, that may be some of the preventing factor for the future innovations. So, and also entrepreneurship. So I would like to emphasize that we have been discussing a lot about agriculture policy reform, but now this whole policy and market environment matters for those innovations. So it's not only agriculture sector policy, but we need to think about more economy-wide environment. Regulatory and institutional environment for to support agriculture innovation. I see in some of the background presentation here, but if you look at this World Bank's ease of starting a business indicator, of course, in the regions of many countries, indeed most of countries, improving the environment to start a business. Including Indonesia, but still there are some discrepancies across country in the regions. So of course there are some more rooms to improve those conditions. And just take a look at the Indonesia's example. I said, agriculture needs more private investment. This is a bit old data, but if you look at the share of agriculture in total investment versus share of agriculture in GDP, the agriculture investment is much smaller than the size of its share in the GDP, which means the agriculture is attracting less investment than other sectors. So that's kind of overview. And now I'm going to move some specific example in China that we have been operating. And I like to raise two cases here of the institutional reforms. First is land institution, land regulation. That's very much fundamental for the agriculture. And the PLC has adopted a series of institutional reform in land institutions. And of course, after the World War II, the land ownership transferred from owners to peasants. But after that, they have established collective farming in 1950s, and transition of private land ownership to collective farming ownership has happened. But since late 1970s, the economic reform started. They established this household responsibility system that reallocate those state-owned collective farm to smallholders, and without land ownership, that provide their land tenure. But after that, the PLC has been reforming these land institutions, adapting to the socioeconomic evolutions in China. And then they first, introduced these registrations of this land. And then that's very much secure the land rights for the farmer. So that farmer has more incentive to invest. And the series of reform has introduced to allow the farmers to rent out land, even establish some cooperatives, production cooperatives, so that those small-scale farming can be overcome. So this is very much a trial and error process. There has been some pilot has done, but there has been a very much consistent and very much evolving regulations in terms of land in China. And as a result, the share of land in rented has been increased over time. It's very minimum in the early 2000s. It's more than 1/3 of land rented to the other farmers, so that the rented out farmer can get income, and the expanding farmer can increase farm size and productivity. The second example is also in the PLC is that the cooperatives. That's actually, as I said, the PLC has demolished this collective farming, but they have been started to again creating institutions for the professional cooperatives. That's become very much driver of the scaling up the farm operations. And this after those new system has established, there's a number of cooperative house increasing very rapidly, and they have done a lot of service to the small scale farmers, such as mechanization and the training, and also marketing, and that has been very much big driver of the sector's modernizations in the PLC we found. So you see the share of the mechanized land has increased very much rapidly, so now reached almost 95% of land mechanized by the relatively large machines. So with this example in China, I just want to stress this is very much the importance of adapting those regulatory frameworks to the evolving socioeconomic status. So now I come back to this international aspect a little bit as my last point. So I said this, there's always some trade costs associated with domestic regulations. And again, this is some of the research done by OECD, and across the, they try to, some researchers try to convert non-tariff measures to the tariff equivalent, import tariff equivalent percentage. And you see in the agriculture food sector, like, processed food, live animals, they have very much high trade costs in terms of sanitary regulation, SPS and TBT. So agriculture is very much subject to those, agriculture trade is subject to, more subject to those trade measures. But on the other hand, these studies find that, yes, it's true, those trade costs associated with those domestic regulation non-tariff measures increase import price. Of course, it has to, importers need to conform, with other countries' regulations, need to adapt and search information, of course, all kinds of costs. But interesting thing is that it could, the regulations, good regulations, could enhance trade. Why? Because if this regulation is transparent, if regulation is very much trusted by consumers, it reduces the information asymmetries, and it strengthens consumers' confidence, which means it's increased the demand. Although the trade costs increase the price, but the demand increase for those countries with similar regulations, with very much trusted regulations. So which means that a good regulation could enhance the trade, and that's very important point to note. And of course, those trade costs can be reduced through removing unnecessary costs that arise from poor design and implementations of those regulations. So I would say emphasize the importance of international cooperations to reduce those unnecessary differences between domestic regulation and of trade partners, and that could enhance confidence of the trade partners, consumer, and could boost your export as well. So that's, I think, important to note. So lastly, this is my last slides, and just summarize just three lessons. So regulation with good design and implementations could boost private sector investment in agriculture, and integration with agriculture with value chains, both domestically and globally. And this is also important for private investment in the country, also the integrations with other countries. And the international cooperation play a big role here to make these regulatory asymmetries and confidence to improve. And I would say the experience of PLC is very important to highlight this adapting these regulations according to the evolving social economic environment. China has tried and error a lot, but it has been very much consistent on always adapting the regulations to the new realities. With that, I will stop my presentation, and thank you very much for the opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Kimura. Very interesting. Talking about the agricultural innovations in Indonesia, we experience the fast growing of IT-related innovations in the agricultural sector, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. And about the lessons learned, very useful, the cases of international reform in land institutions and the institutional reform in the farm organization in PRC. So I think the Indonesian Ministry of Agriculture will have questions about this later on. But before the Q&A session, we will move to the next speaker. We welcome Professor Erizal Jamal from the Ministry of Agriculture Indonesia to present. The time is yours, Professor.
Sorry, Ibu Nat, the Minister of Agriculture is already here. Thank you.
Okay, apologize. So the Minister of Agriculture, His Excellency, already joined us. So I'll give back to Ms. Ocha for the speech. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nathalie Leonhardt. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we are honored to have our Minister of Agriculture, Republic Indonesia, His Excellency Dr. Syahrul Yassin Limpo, SHMH, who is joining us today in the workshop. Therefore, we would love to welcome His Excellency Dr. Syahrul Yassin Limpo, SHMH, to the workshop and to hear a speech from the Excellencies Dr. Syahrul Yassin Limpo, SHMH. To the Excellency, Dr. Syahrul Yassin Limpo, SHMH, please, the time is yours.
Ya, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi dan salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Ya, terutama yang hadir dalam webinar yang kita lakukan hari ini. Dr. Pan Queen Min, Assistant Director and Head of the Food, Agriculture and Forestry, FAF, Division of Asia Committee, yang saya hormati, His Excellency Cameron Mackie, Ambassador of Canada for Indonesia, para pembicara dari beberapa negara Asia, antara lain Mr. Shinko Kimura dari Asian Development Bank, Prof. Admond Tayo dari Local Government Development Foundation Philippines, Mr. Matthew Fried, I'm sorry, dari OECD Indonesia Country Office, Mr. Rodolphe Fischera dari Department of Agriculture Philippines, Saudara Sekretaris Jenderal Kementan dan para pejabat eselon 1 yang mendampingi saya, dan juga pejabat eselon 2, para peserta international workshop, dan hadirin yang sama saya hormati. Pertama-tama mari kita panjatkan puji dan syukur kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, Tuhan yang Maha Kuasa, atas segala rahmat dan hidayahnya. Kita dapat hadir dalam international workshop dalam bentuk virtual hari ini dengan tema berbagi pengalaman dan pembelajaran tentang perbaikan regulasi di Asia, sharing of good practice and lesson learn of regulatory improvement in Asia. Saya memandang acara workshop ini sangat penting bagi kita di Indonesia khususnya, di tengah semangat kita melakukan berbagai perbaikan regulasi di dalam negeri, terutama dengan telah ditetapkannya Undang-Undang Nomor 11 Tahun 2020 tentang Cipta Kerja, yang merupakan langkah monumental Indonesia dalam menata regulasi di dalam negeri untuk bisa mengakselerasi investasi, bisa melakukan produktivitas di bidang pertanian, bahkan secara langsung bisa meningkatkan perekonomian yang ada di Indonesia. Indonesia tidak bisa lepas dari satu negara besar ASEAN, lebih regional lagi adalah Asia Tenggara, dan Indonesia berposisi untuk menjadi pilar yang selalu berkontribusi hadirnya kedamaian, ketentraman, keteraturan yang ada di Asia Tenggara, lebih khusus Asia pada umumnya, bahkan untuk dunia. Salah satu penunjang utama adalah bagaimana sektor pertanian dan berbagai sektor lain yang mendorong ekonomi bisa kita akselerasi lebih baik di masa yang akan datang. Dunia menjadi satu, apalagi dalam bentuk regional, kerjasama antara negara akan menjadi bagian-bagian penting besok yang akan kita hadapi dalam kehidupan baru dunia yang ada after COVID ini. Para hadirin yang sama saya hormati, sejalan dengan subtema dari workshop ini, yaitu dampak dan tantangan khususnya pada sektor pertanian selama pandemi COVID-19, the impact and challenge especially in agriculture sector and during COVID-19 pandemic. Kami ingin berbagi dengan semua peserta di mancanegara bahwa selama triwulan 2 dan 3 dari pelaksanaan pembangunan di Indonesia dengan jumlah penduduk 273 juta orang itu, pertumbuhan ekonomi menunjukkan angka negatif yaitu -5 dan kemudian turun menjadi minus 3,45. Kondisi disebabkan melemahnya perekonomian global yang berdampak pada turunnya aktivitas ekonomi di Indonesia. Bahkan daya beli rumah tangga juga terdampak sangat turun. Dalam kondisi yang demikian berat, kita bersyukur karena sektor pertanian menjadi penyelamat negara di Indonesia. Sehingga penurunan ekonomi Indonesia tidak terlalu dalam, seperti yang dialami beberapa negara tetangga. Ya, ada yang turun sampai 12% selama triwulan pertama, ada yang turun minus 17% selama triwulan 2. Sektor pertanian tumbuh positif di Indonesia dan 16,24% daripada triwulan 3, bahkan masih naik 2,15%. Hal ini menandakan bahwa selama wabah pandemik ini kita di pertanian tetap melaksanakan aktivitas ekonomi seperti biasa, tentunya dengan tetap memperhatikan protokol COVID-19, sehingga kegiatan di lahan, di ladang pertanian berjalan dengan baik. Dan menghadapi situasi ini tentunya kami sangat mengapresiasi kerja keras para petani, semangat para petani di seluruh Indonesia, yang saat ini jumlahnya 48 juta orang berada di on farm. Dan saat Hari Pahlawan 10 November kemarin kami tidak ragu untuk menyatakan petani merupakan pahlawan dan pejuang pangan di tengah ancaman pandemik. Peserta webinar dan hadirin sekalian yang sama saya hormati, saya sangat bahagia menemukan pertemuan ini. Suatu saat kalau COVID sudah selesai, kita physical meeting, dan saya siap menjadi tuan rumah di Kementerian Pertanian di Indonesia untuk semua yang hadir di webinar ini. Bapak hadirin sekalian, sejalan dengan tema internasional workshop kita hari ini tentang upaya kita dalam membangun regulasi yang baik untuk menopang pelaksanaan pembangunan pertanian, maka kami mengharapkan dalam internasional workshop ini terjadi sharing, tukar-menukar informasi lintas negara, dan menunjang upaya kita pada pengembangan regulasi yang tepat, sehingga regulasi ini tidak membatasi akselerasi kita, tetapi justru akan memperkuat dan menjadi penyaluran upaya-upaya bersama antara negara sekaligus, dan memperkuat ketahanan dalam negara Indonesia, sehingga besok pertanian akan bertumbuh lebih kuat lagi. Saudara-saudara sekalian, sejalan dengan itu, tugas pokok dan fungsi ini di pertanian dan dalam semangat undang-undang Cipta Kerja, maka ke depan upaya pengembangan regulasi tentu tetap dalam semangat untuk membangun regulasi yang baik dan tepat. Kita harus formulasi regulasi itu agar betul mengantisipasi apa yang ada. Regulasi yang tepat dicirikan oleh kejelasan rumusan, bahkan kesesuaian norma dan asas, serta terhindar dari disharmonis dengan aturan lain, dan tentu saja kita berharap akan efektif dalam kita mengoperasionalkan dan melaksanakannya. Kondisi ini harus menjadi target kita bersama, karena keberhasilan kita dalam melahirkan reformasi yang besar melalui Undang-Undang Nomor 11 Tahun 2020 tentang Cipta Kerja akan menjadi sia-sia bila di tingkat kementerian dan lembaga kita malah menghasilkan regulasi yang tidak tepat, yang rigid, yang kaku, dan kemudian menjebak kita untuk tidak bisa melakukan jumping, meloncat atau melakukan terobosan menghadirkan ruang-ruang investasi yang kuat. Jadi harus ada kontrol yang kuat dalam proses penyusunan regulasi di tingkat kementerian, baik kementerian lain maupun termasuk khususnya ke Kementerian Pertanian. Pengaturan di tingkat kementerian dan lembaga ini menjadi penting karena sampai saat ini dan regulasi yang ada di Indonesia, sumbangan regulasi dari kementerian dan lembaga sangat signifikan. Berdasarkan data Bappenas selama 2000-2015, pemerintah menerbitkan sekitar 12.471 regulasi. Dari seluruh regulasi yang disusun sekitar 66% lebih merupakan peraturan setingkat menteri. Jadi seperti itu besarnya aturan-aturan yang ada. Bapak Ibu sekalian yang sama saya hormati, kita semua berharap semoga dari workshop ini kita bisa memetik pembelajaran yang berharga terkait dengan upaya kita dalam menyusun regulasi yang baik, tepat, dan memiliki antisipasi yang kuat terhadap kebutuhan dunia yang ada, bahkan dengan kemajuan-kemajuan dan tantangan era baru yang kita hadapi secara bersama ke depan. Pada semua pihak yang telah berkontribusi dalam international workshop ini, saya aturkan terima kasih atas waktu dan pikiran yang dicurahkan, penghargaan yang sama kepada seluruh panitia tentu, sehingga acara dapat terselenggara dengan sangat baik dan lancar. Selamat untuk semua, salam sehat dari Indonesia untuk semuanya. Semoga Tuhan Yang Maha Esa senantiasa memberikan bimbingan dan lindungan kepada kita semua. Sekian, kurang lebih mohon maaf. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, His Excellency Dr. Syahrul Yassin Limpo, SHMH. Ladies and gentlemen, as we promised, we are going to take another picture together with His Excellency Dr. Syahrul Yassin Limpo, SHMH, and the other officials and the panelists in this workshop. Therefore, please turn on your camera and get ready for the picture. The picture will be taken by Mr. Tafsan. To Mr. Tafsan, please take your time.
Mr. Rodolfo, please open your video. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait. Okay. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. Thank you. And finally, 1, 2, and 3. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Tafsan. And with that being said, I would like to give the stage back to Ms. Natalie Leonhardt. Natalie Leonhardt, please, the time is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Ocha. Before we continue with presentations, we have Yusek Rodolfo Visera from Department of Agriculture, the Philippines. He's already joined us. Good morning, sir. Magandang umaga. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Magandang umaga po. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we welcome Professor Erizal Jamal from the Ministry of Agriculture Indonesia to present. The time is yours, Professor. I think Professor Erizal is preparing now. Or maybe, can we start or okay, maybe I think we will move to another presenter. Yeah. We will have another presenter, and after we will go back to Professor Erizal. Yeah, now we will listen to presentation from the OECD. We welcome Dr. Mike Pfister to present. Please, the time is yours, sir.
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much for this invitation. As I mentioned earlier, Excellencies, the Minister, the Ambassador, distinguished panelists and organizers. I'm joining today from Paris, in fact. So it's rather early on my side, but I have a view on the French farmland, in fact. And at this time in the morning, it's about, if I check correctly, it's 4 o'clock on the dot. So the farmers will be getting up anyway to start with their work and basically providing the necessary support to the French economy in terms of agricultural produce. So I'm actually very pleased to be here at this time. I had a presentation. I don't know if the organizers could share the presentation as I present.
Yeah, I think Pak Tasman, could you please share the PowerPoint presentation of Dr. Mike?
Sorry, which file? Thank you.
Maybe I could help for this.
Thank you, Mas.
Perfect. So first of all, before I start, I think a lot of the messages have already been made, but I think it's absolutely key to look at better regulation also in the agricultural context. We know that the agricultural sector is of extreme importance to the economy. It's of extreme importance to the social goals and sustainable goals, even for any economy, in fact. So any improvements you can make within the agricultural sector will have huge ramifications, positive ramifications for society at large. And our colleague from ADB also mentioned, that the agricultural sector is actually really, if you will, challenged by a number of regulations, and that is because it has to be protected, and it is such a sensitive sector that you will see that some of these regulations might be heavier in the agricultural sector than some of the other sectors. So what we need to find is a balance. I also like to just maybe to jump back on what our colleague was saying from the ADB, that of course we need more private investment in the agriculture sector, and for that, regulation can help. However, we also need to make sure that the small and medium, really the small scale farmers are able to produce freely and able to participate in agricultural value chains. And there, again, regulation has to be set to make sure that the smaller players, which are, which would actually make up the majority of the agricultural actors, need to be able to easily produce and to easily have access to inputs and to then easily bring their produce to the markets. On the one hand, ensuring that, of course, they have enough food for their families, but that also they can benefit from the market opportunities that exist. In fact, I'm really grateful that we've had such such a variety of interventions already in the early stage of this webinar, which allows me to take maybe a bit of a step back and not focus too much on the agricultural sector per se, but on good regulatory practices more broadly, and see how we can make the connections with the agricultural sector. I'm extremely happy to see that the Ministry of Agriculture in Indonesia has taken the regulatory policy extremely seriously, because in most cases, we speak to the center of government unit, if you will, within the center of the governmental machinery, which is then in charge of basically distilling regulatory policy to other parts of the government. So I'm extremely pleased to be talking to, I would say, constituents within the agriculture sector, which really shows how seriously they're taking this, and so I'm very pleased about this. I will focus, as I said, a bit more on the bigger picture, but also look at regulatory impact assessments, which, from the experience in OECD countries, is a key aspect, is a key tool in making sure regulation is impactful and that regulation actually hits where it's supposed to hit in terms of improving the way things are being done. So maybe just quickly, the OECD, of course, we are a Paris-based organization, but we have a very strong global agenda. I would say our footprint is global, and particularly in the ASEAN region, it's extremely powerful. We have an Indonesian office, which we're extremely pleased to have. It's relatively new, it's been around for a number of years. But maybe just to focus on what we do on good regulatory practices in the ASEAN region, we have at the regional level, we have a network of OECD and ASEAN policymakers, regulatory policymakers, which is the Good Regulatory Practice Network, which was established in 2015. And I'll talk about it a little bit towards the end and see how we can connect with this webinar. But we also do, of course, a number of country level analysis, always so assessments and recommendations in the area of administrative simplifications, in the area of good regulatory practices more generally. Most recently, we just finished if you will, a review of the regulatory impact system in the Philippines. And we also undertook a review of sort of the oversight function of regulatory policy in Thailand. So these are just some examples of what we do at country level as well. Could we have the next slide, please? So anyway, as I said, I would just talk a little bit about the evolution of regulatory reforms before deep diving into regulatory impact assessments. And I think we will then see how we can use the experience of different countries in regulatory impact assessments for the agricultural sector in Indonesia. And last but not least, I'll look at what we are doing at the regional level. Next slide, please. The problem with better regulation is that it's an extremely complex undertaking to get it right. And no country in this world can say that they got it right because everyone is struggling with different parts of the spectrum that that we describe as the good regulatory practices. And we try to put it into 4 different boxes. And of course, these boxes, they're interlinked and they overlap at some point. I mean, what we see from our work in terms of assisting countries in their regulatory reforms is that the first step is for them to be a whole of government strategy and a whole of government system. Now, of course, this is very different if you're talking about a country like Switzerland, which is very, very small in comparative terms, based on a strong federal system with strong subnational governments. And then you take it, for example, you're looking at Indonesia, which is massive. The minister just mentioned with the over 280 million population, the thousands of islands. Implementing a whole of government strategy and system is extremely difficult, particularly in large, complex economies. I have also just listed some of the OECD instruments and policy tools that you can, if you want to, refer back to, and I'll be pleased to answer any questions even after this workshop. Feel free to contact the organizers to get in touch with me, and I can provide you with more information. As part of the strategy, you will quickly see that the strategy can only work if it is implemented properly, and for that you need the tools. And this is the box that I have here on my top right corner. Really, we need to develop the tools for better regulations. So there we have, for example, the regulatory impact assessments, doing stakeholder consultations and engagements, right, and ex post review. I think that is extremely important. I mean, we would see that the biggest problems that we face when introducing new regulations for them to be effective is that we have a backlog of old regulation that has been around for decades, sometimes even centuries, that will actually prevent the new regulation to be effective. So really, we need to review the stock of regulation, see what is still pertinent, what is still hitting home, in terms of efficiency. And that is a very, very difficult task, because these, in the practical terms, and there we go to the bottom left corner, which is the institutions. Many institutions are the hosts of regulations, so they will protect that turf because, of course, they will say, okay, well, my sector has a crucial importance in the overall economy, so I have these regulations for a reason. That is true, but we need to go back to that first box, have a whole of government perspective, so that we can really see which regulation works, which sector needs to be regulated a bit differently, to see how the whole system works. And this becomes extremely important when we talk of international regulatory cooperation, for example, where now we're not only talking domestically, we're talking regionally, we're talking globally. In the agricultural sector is of course producing for self-subsistency. It is producing for the market, domestic market. It's also producing for international markets. And so really, regulation is not just a domestic issue, it's also an international issue, which makes this whole endeavor even more complicated. Maybe if I could have the next slide, please. So why do we care so much about regulatory impact assessments? To see what do we care in terms of what are the impacts of regulation? I mean, basically, the simple message is that bad regulation will lead to terrible outcomes at a societal level. And so this is just to to remind us all at what are some of the root causes, if you will, of strategic failures that can be induced through regulation. So, for example, if the planning is unstructured, if we rush to regulate, particularly, let's say, for example, in the COVID situation, there was a rush in most of our jurisdictions across the world to come up with new regulations to facilitate, the import of new equipments, for example, and to basically, or to even help SMEs access these some of the measures that were put in place during the pandemic to help them survive during the pandemic. So there was a certain rush to regulate. There is also the risk of capture, and that's what I mentioned earlier. We have certain turf wars that are going on, interest groups that have built over centuries, if you will, and thus we have that risk of captures. There's also, on the other hand, the inadequate evidence. Data is critical. It's very difficult to have proper data. We know how difficult it is to even have data, for example, on private investment in agriculture. 3-4 different international bodies will come up with 3-4 different figures because it is so difficult to have accurate data. And without proper data, how can you do proper regulation and policy? So because the evidence is then skewed, is inadequate. And this is not necessarily an intentional outcome. It's just it's a structural deficiency that we have in many systems, and also very scarce and difficult to access public policy capacities. And many times, we have the innovations, the solutions coming from the private sector going faster than what is happening in the public sector. So that pacing problem is very difficult. So how do we make sure that in the public sector we have the right capacity to be able to regulate effectively? So this will lead to a risk of regulatory failures. And with that, you'll have very frequent amendments and excessive flows and burdens of regulation. I mean, how many times we would hear in any government and any time 3-4 iterations of a regulation during the same year, constantly amending it. And this goes against what we always preach: stability, credibility in institutions, which comes through stability, right? At the same time, you need to adjust. So these regulatory impact assessments, for example, that we'll go into a bit more detail, should help in this to basically introduce flexibility within a stable system. And this will lead to duplications, to inconsistencies, to high costs and disproportionate costs. So higher costs than the actual benefit of the regulation, reduced legal certainty and predictability, and reduced accountability of the public sector. And I think particularly now in day and age, the public sector is really being scrutinized by society, but rightly so. And as such, having a regulation in place or implementing regulation in an ineffective manner will actually hurt the accountability of governments even more. And at the end of the day, we've got, I would say, the strategic failures from bad regulations. So reduced health outcomes, reduced quality of life, reduced investments in innovation. If the private investor is not sure that the product that he will put on the market is protected from an intellectual property perspective, for example, why is he going to actually contribute to innovation and invest in innovation? He will go somewhere else where the framework is stronger to protect his product going on the market, and ultimately trust and credibility in the system that the government has put up. Next slide, please. So let's just dig into a little bit into this famous animal called regulatory impact assessments. First, I think I really have to say that no RIA, as we call it in jargon, is like another. RIAs are very, very different, and they can take very different shapes. But it's a process. So basically, it's a process. It's a formal and systematic policy tool. It's a way of examining and measuring the likely benefit, costs, and effect an existing regulation. So it's often also used to manage the flow of regulation. Why is it important? We looked at it earlier already a little bit, but it's really the RIA will really add to the control of the quality of regulation. As such, it is a step in improving competitiveness. It will help develop evidence for policymaking to make sure, or to answer the question whether is the regulation that we're currently assessing the best available means to address the policy objective. Let's also remember that not everything has to be a regulation. So sometimes governments have a tendency to overregulate because they think regulation is the only tool. No, you also have to basically entrust other parts of society, other parts of the economy to, on the one hand, self-regulate, to come up with its own standards. For example, in the area of responsible business conduct, you see a lot of initiatives in the private sector. So these have to be promoted. It improves, RIA can improve transparency. If you have evidence, if you have data that basically assesses certain regulation, it improves transparency both within government and within civil society. And it can help translate very complex regulation into simple language that is understandable for everyone and easily accessible, not just to regulatory policy experts coming from fancy places and sitting within a policy unit within the government. Regulation affects everyone across society. Next slide, please. And just very quickly, the way we can basically categorize the different parts of what we call evidence-based decision-making through RIA. The first step, of course, is the definition of the policy objective and the policy context. The second is then identifying what are the regulatory options that we should target, that we should basically kickstart to achieve the policy objective. Then we need to assess the costs and the benefits of that regulation. And then, of course, the design, which has to include enforcement mechanism, compliance mechanism, and monitoring, basically the application of the regulation. And then we can then go back to the beginning through a RIA process in consultations with different stakeholders to see whether that regulation has actually, as I said, hit on in terms of its delivery. Can we have the next slide, please? So in order to support governments and stakeholders in undertaking RIA, I mean, the OECD has come up with the best practice principles for RIA. Feel free to, these are available on OECD's website. Feel free to have a look at them, or also get in touch with us should you need more information on them. Some of the main messages from the best practice principles are that you need the commitment and buy-in from the very top of government, because only with a very honest approach to regulatory impact assessment are you going to have a candid and credible assessment. The governance is extremely important. You can have the best instrument if the system of implementing it is not the right one. It's not going to be effective. You need to embed and strengthen the capacity for RIA and the accountability within the administration. And as such, of course, you need to then adopt the methodology within your own context. As I said earlier, Switzerland will never have the same approach to RIA, for example, than Indonesia. And of course, continuous evaluation and improvement. It's a depressing message, but regulatory reform is a marathon without a finish line. It's a process that keeps going. It's about basically moving to better equilibriums, if you will, of regulatory equilibriums, to move into more optimal policy solutions. But it's a marathon without a finish line, and you can never say we have reached the final line. Next slide, please. I think I'm getting closer to the end of my presentation. I just wanted to say really how we at the OECD see regulatory reform as a community effort. And as such, we're very pleased to have a network in place to promote regulatory reform within ASEAN. But also, I would say we learn a lot from the ASEAN experience. I think particularly now during COVID, we have seen countries like Vietnam, really strive forward with extremely innovative solutions in terms of tackling the pandemic and economic recovery. So I think even the OECD community is also looking very close at what is happening within the ASEAN region to basically help inform its own policy measures. Just very quickly, this network is chaired by Malaysia and New Zealand. This is held it is held every year since 2015, but this year, of course, it is held digitally. So I invite everyone to participate as well. Here's a link. Feel free to register and participate in the discussions. My next slide is going to highlight just some of the elements that we have been able to address through this network, particularly within the view of promoting regulatory reform. So if I can have the next slide, please. So these are just some key takeaways from the 3 sessions of the network. In the first one, we really looked at what have countries done, basically looking back to strengthen their regulatory frameworks, particularly with a view to spur economic recovery and to tackle the pandemic. And what we saw is that even particularly during the COVID pandemic, regulatory policy is as important as ever, that even when governments had to basically cut through a number of administrative steps in order to deliver on the regulation, it is still key that these regulations are time-bound and that they're being reviewed regularly. So GRPs, good regulatory practices, even in these rush times, are extremely important. The second webinar, we looked at the digital tools, and we already saw earlier in the webinar the importance of digital tools to promote reforms within the agriculture sector. So it really looked at the importance of strengthening data and how information technology can help us deal with big data, to have better data, to have more evidence, because that's what you have to use technology for a reason, not just to have another gadget on your iPhone, but basically how can you innovate and add true value through innovation. But of course, this has also implications. Digital technologies are transboundary by nature. It's very difficult to regulate digital technologies because, again, who owns, if you will, the digital technology on the international sphere? Last but not least, we will have the next network meeting on 1st of December. As I mentioned, you're kindly invited to participate, because there we will look at what are the lessons for the future to basically build up regulatory frameworks that are more crisis-proof for the going forward. Next slide, please. And this, I would just like to extend my terima kasih to all the participants, and thank you for your time. And I'll be available to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Pfister. Thank you so much. A short comment about the RIA, Regulatory Impact Assessment. For more than 1 year, NSLIP project from 2019
Hi, Bunat, you're still mute.
Okay, sorry. So a short comment about the regulatory impact assessment. The NSLIP project for more than 1 year, from 2019 to mid of 2020, we assisted the Minister of Agriculture, especially the Law Bureau, to improve the quality of regulations using the RIA tools. And it's admitted by the Law Bureau that it's really useful in opening the new paradigm of the Law Bureau staff on how to establish an effective regulations, and also enhancing the process of building an effective and quality regulation. We have produced also a series of videos of RIA in both Bahasa Indonesia and English that you probably watched at the beginning of this webinar. There are 2 things that we added in the RIA guidelines, the gender equality and environmental aspects that needs to be addressed in the regulatory impact process. And of course, high-level commitment is needed in the implementation of these tools. Yeah, we will discuss more on that. And thank you also for the invitation to participate in the GRPN in December this year. As a reminder to all participants, if you have questions, please type and submit through the Q&A box. Next, we invite Professor Edmund Tayau to present. The time is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Natalie. I'm glad that I'm following Dr. Pfister's presentation because I think my presentation converges exactly with his. And in other words, thank you for that. That means I don't have to talk too much. And after that, of course, my good friend, Undersecretary Rudy Visera will follow and therefore perhaps complete sort of outline from which I will deal with the more macro aspect, and Yusek Rudy will deal on the more specific aspect, which is on agriculture. Perhaps we can start sharing the first slide, at least the title slide.
Pak Taswan, please share the slides.
Oh, okay. So I sent my slides, but I can, yeah, there you are. Okay. I thought I'd share with you a work that I did with the European Chamber of Commerce 2 years back, no? And segue into the discussion of how crucial, no, some of the key issues as far as regulation is concerned in the Philippines. But let me emphasize first some points before I move forward. One, I'd like to point out that when you work on policies and regulations, it is always a challenge in developing countries. And this I always emphasize when I work with development organizations, because especially when there's a project call, there are always some standard indicators, and such indicators have to be followed in formulating projects, which almost always seem like clockwork, which is quite difficult for project implementers like us to tailor-made to these specific conditions, no? In not only in a particular country, but in a particular sector, no? Whether you're talking of trade or agriculture, it has to coincide exactly with the unique circumstances, no? And so, second point is that policies and regulations are as good only as the political system in place. This is why I was always telling some of my colleagues that my work as a political and administrative reform expert always coincides with specific policy work, because as Dr. Pfister mentioned, the whole of government approach should always be part of the tools that will be considered in developing particular projects. No? So, it's as good only as the existing political system, because ultimately it depends significantly on existing institutions. And this is why I agree entirely whenever someone says that there's always some kind of a turf war, so to speak, when it comes to formulation of policies, implementing the same, and even assessing or measuring the impact of such regulations. So third, from where I sit, and what I'd always say to development partners is I work with, is that the approach in developing countries is significantly different. No, we can learn a lot from developed countries, but note that while both developed and developing countries are engaged in the same objective, which is economic development, the latter is doing institution building at the same time that we are engaged in perfecting or improving on our regulations. Hence, perhaps it might be a surprise, or it might be interesting for you to note that it's only quite recently that the Philippines has come up with a very important law, which is the competition law. And of course, establishing an institution in this regard, the Philippine Competition Commission. So let's see the next slide, what I've tried to explain in some of our stakeholders here. For obvious reasons, we need competition law because we need some kind of, that's the third slide. Before that, please. So we need the competition law because we need still very much some kind of reliability when it comes to regulations, reliability, and of course stability, no, and of course ultimately sustainability of policies. You see, when the competition law was enacted, and that's why I'm using the old figure here, which is the 2015 World Bank ease of doing business, you can very well see the catch up that the Philippines has to work on significantly compared to our neighboring countries. In fact, a very recent assessment work that I've encountered in preparing for this presentation is that Vietnam has already overtaken the Philippines, no? In a lot of aspects, no? Particularly in terms of economic growth. You know, in the case of the Philippines, we're still fighting very much, no? Monopolies, oligopolies, duopolies, no? Basically, so many challenges that essentially restrict competition. And this pandemic has not helped. And in fact has led a new law which was enacted precisely to purportedly allow the government to address issues related to the pandemic, suspending so much of the work of the Philippine Competition Commission. Of course, there are so many expected with this implications as a result of such suspension, but anyway, we can deal with that later so that we can have more time for discussion. So essentially, the competition law was enacted in preparation for the ASEAN Economic Community closer cooperation, and ultimately as an individual country to achieve a more inclusive development. Again, especially now that as the good Excellency for Minister of Agriculture mentioned, no, you know, in the Philippines, it's sad that because of the pandemic, we are now in contraction, which is something that, of course, very much unexpected. We are hit not only by the pandemic, but I'm sure you may have encountered in some news that just very recently we were hit by not one, but two very strong super typhoons. So, you know, we're really so much wanting to do a lot of catch-up work at this time. Next slide, please. So, next slide. So, there is very much an opportunity there, and you know, if you look at these figures again at the time when we enacted the law, ASEAN has been getting so much foreign direct investment, but the Philippines is not really getting so much of a share, no, in this regard. 3% of the global economy, at least in 2013. That's 2 years before we enacted the law, attracted more than 8% of the global foreign direct investment. Now, 16% of those FDI flows to the developing world. So we've seen a five-fold rise in FDI stock per capita from $500 in 2000 to nearly 2,500 in 2013. So it's a very significant increase, and the opportunity is so much there. But it's always a question of what needs to be done for countries like the Philippines to make the most out of this opportunity. Next slide, please. Next slide. So this is basically what I'm talking about. We're so much behind in foreign direct investment net inflows, whether you're talking of intra or extra ASEAN. The Philippines is only better compared to Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, which are, of course, smaller economies so far. 43% only of Vietnam's in terms of intra-ASEAN, and 63% only of Vietnam's from outside ASEAN. So we really have to do a lot of intensive review of what remains lacking in terms of not only regulation, but what kind of incentives that could be needed to consider by the any investor coming in the Philippines. No? Next slide. In other words, I thought it's just appropriate to identify challenges to successful implementation. And I thought of sharing with you at least 5 of these challenges to my mind. One is that large capital and economies of scale requirements that only foreign capital can possibly provide has to be considered significantly. You see, we have very restrictive provisions in our constitution, in major sectors. And this is the reason why, apart from getting involved in very specific work on, say, for example, decentralization or regulation in trade and agriculture, I've always been active in pushing for amendments to the Constitution. And as mentioned by our good host, our moderator, I've been very active in the consultative committee and have really been pushing for changes in our Constitution, because at the end of it all, this is the very framework where all regulations are depending on. No? The second is that we have very inadequate industrial support structure. And this can only be addressed by decentralization. You see, this skewed development in the Philippines in favor of the national capital region is not helping enhance so much opportunity in the countryside. And I've seen this, of course, with the work we've been doing in empowering local governments and identifying the key industries that could have helped propel the economy better. No? But again, precisely because of pendulum swings in administration, which impacts directly on regulation and implementing of key policies, it has not really worked out well, for in our case. Now, these are all significantly affected or due to the third point, the continuing domination of the same political and economic elites. So many of us have been pushing for reforms for God knows how long. I've been in this work for more than 20 years now, and to be honest with you, I have yet to see a very significant change moving forward. We need timely and effective and efficient implementation. Almost always we're bogged down by so much, not only bureaucratic red tape, but what's this bargaining between the different political groups and not being able to involve as much stakeholders as possible. In other words, in conclusion, there's a need for a more proactive and inclusive governance. Agriculture has always been supposedly a very strong suit as far as the Philippines is concerned, but sadly, we have not been able to maximize any of it or any of the other industries or sectors that we very much enjoy. No? Next slide. With that, I'd like to think that we really have so much work to do. And as I would always try to explain and impress on our policymakers, our political leaders, we need to graduate from palliatives. And there has to be a serious effort to look towards more comprehensive solutions. So in my case, I thought the focus as far as the work in the Philippines, apart from regulations, is ultimately improving on governance mechanisms. Yun po, maraming salamat, terima kasih, and thank you very much for everyone.
Thank you very much, Professor Edmund. Thank you for your useful insights and to share with us the Philippines' experience in implementing and maximizing the competition law, because it's impacted among others the foreign investment, direct investment. Yeah. Interesting to learn from the experience of our neighbors. So we will listen to more experience and lessons from the Philippines, especially in the agricultural sector. We welcome Yusek Rodolfo Visera from Department of Agriculture, the Philippines. The time is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. May I request for I only have a one-page presentation actually, and if it can be shared on the screen, please.
Yeah. Pak Tasman, can you please share? Thank you.
Oh yes, good morning. Good morning to everyone. This is the new food security framework that we have adopted already for the department. This is actually what the new leadership in the department brought in, and I was part of the new team that was our Secretary of Agriculture now, Dr. William Doliante Dar, who is now our leader here. And I would like to present this food security framework, which is the basis now of most of the new actions that the department is adopting for the various participants in the sector, including, of course, more importantly, our bureaucracy here. We have a few. We are an organization that spans the various regions, but actually, total we're roughly only around 13,000 government servants here in the department. The food security framework has been brought in because over the past decades, we have observed, the Secretary has observed that the focus of most of the programs of the department in many governments prior has been centered only on food production, agriculture production. And if you will notice here on our vision, it says here, a food secure and resilient Philippines with prosperous farmers and fisher folk. The change really is in the last four words. We're looking at prosperous farmers and fishers. The reason for that is we see in our statistics here in the Philippines that our farmers and fishers have always been the poorest sector in this country. And that is the reason why we have seen a lot of rural to urban migration. Many of our farmers and their children tend to go out of the provinces and try to move to the cities in order to look for greener pastures, for better sources of income and higher income jobs. While in the rural sector, those who are left behind are essentially the ones that who have no longer the chance to get out, and we are really trying to rework this situation. The focus of this vision now is we need to show our farmers and fishers that actually there's so much that potential, there's so much potential for the agriculture sector. Just to mention, any simple analysis of various crops and commodities in terms of rural production, even the production of rice, for instance, is actually a very, very profitable enterprise. When you go into fruits, when you go into livestock, and even in fishing, there is so much untapped potential that our rural sector seem to be unable to capture, when in fact they should be the ones who can enrich themselves much faster. But the problem is there is so many institutional difficulties that that they need to address. And one of them, for instance, is the very low level of education, especially in the rural segments of our population. The average educational level, for instance, of in our agriculture sector, farmers and fishers, is second year high school. And so the technologies that they tend to apply in their production activities are the ones that they have inherited from their fathers and grandparents, so that the productivity in our sector has remained so poor, and the level of incomes, of course, are very evident. They're still below the poverty line on at the national scale. No, they are below the poverty line whenever you talk of farmers and fishers in this country. And that is one of the things that we really need to address. And how do we do that? I will explain to you later the kind of approach that the Secretary William Dar, is now working on. We're still starting to implement these ideas though. And so it will take us the next 3 years, probably, because we only have 2.5 years actually left as we got in to this post. I was brought in by Secretary Dar only last year together with him when he came in August of last year. So let me just focus again. Our vision for our country's agriculture sector, for our farmers and fisher folk, is also, is also to bring them, in terms of their mission, to bring them in, to let them become also prosperous, because there is so much potential for that. However, over the last few months, the last semester, as you can see, everybody's now, all countries all over the world are now focused on solving one great issue, and that is COVID-19. And this is also something that we needed to address, and it has now become one of the top priority considerations in the department. And we proposed this green bar here after our vision, no, as our response to the COVID-19 situation. And we have been part of the interagency task force to address the difficulties of COVID. Among the first things that we needed to do was to ensure that transport of food towards our urban sectors should be assured. And we were able to do that. We got our interagency task force, the national task force, to address the COVID pandemic, to adopt a policy to allow agriculture transport, the produce, agriculture produce, to be brought to the cities. Although it took us also over a month to do that, we had to make sure that the coordination problems that we encountered sometime in February and March, when some farmers were not able to deliver their harvests to the cities. They just had to throw them by the roadside, and that was so pathetic. But we were able to at least minimize that, and we were able to assure that delivery of food supplies to the cities, and ensuring also that the livelihood of our farmers would continue. But let me go now to some key aspects. I cannot discuss, I think, all the boxes here. I will just focus on two things. One is that the regulatory aspects of the food security framework is very well entrenched. I would like to note and highlight that regulation in the sector is not the sole. We are not the only government agency that is focusing on regulation of various aspects of the sector. There is regulation, for instance, in the export and import of products and access to the ports, etc. Transport systems have a different set of regulation, and I can mention a few things here. The boxes in pink, we have at least 3 items here that would be regulated by our department, the Department of Agriculture. We would like to focus, and I would like to focus on food safety, because there was a new law only enacted in 2015. And this is now among the things that we would be working together with our ministry, our Department of Health. Food safety is very important to us. But because of this pandemic, we are now also highlighting the need for price stability. Although it is not our Ministry of Agriculture's main mission, because price stability belongs to another department of government, the Department of Trade and Industry. We have been working closely with them in terms of contributing and addressing the factors that have tended to increase the prices of food. In fact, right now, we are facing this issue with respect to certain products like meat, for instance, have doubled in prices over the past few months. And we are doing our best, because there has been a reduction in supply of meat because of the African swine flu, and there's also the FAW in terms of the other products. There are also certain other problems. We would like to, we have been addressing this together with the other agencies. Now, the focus of our response to COVID-19 is really in this the second and third line. We wanted to make sure food is available, food is accessible, the prices are stable, food prices, and towards the longer term, we would like to ensure the sustainability and availability of this food, the sustainability of the production systems. And that leads me now to the next 2 lines here. One is the strategies, food consolidation, modernization, industrialization, export promotion. These are the strategies now in the medium to long-term development of our sector. But along the way, we are also trying to bring in new ideas, and that should include observance of the standards that have to be regulated by the existing laws. We have laws on food safety. We have laws on exports. We have laws on price stability. Although we are not the main actors in terms of implementing these laws, I just want to emphasize that we contribute towards better implementation of these laws, and hopefully these laws will also help in the development of the sector. But let me just one more highlight here. Our focus now is really on farm consolidation and clustering, because a law before agrarian reform law tended to divide the land holdings of our farm producers. Okay, a law that was enacted 2 decades ago is still impacting negatively into the sector. And the reason for this is smaller and smaller farm sizes make it difficult for our farmers to produce and take advantage of economies of scale. The average land holding now of our farmers in this country is less than 1 hectare. It's 0.9 hectare. So you can expect that farmers are tilling smaller and smaller land sizes because their families are also growing. And as we go through the decades, they get to have more children dividing these lots, and the father will have to give it to his sons, and therefore the land holdings now are so much smaller. And this is the reason also why the Department of Agriculture here is trying to put together and encourage our farmers to group together so that they can access, in terms of getting access to better production systems, to better technologies, to and even access to credit. You see, access to credit among our farmers and fishers is very low. We even have to create laws to make sure that banks will lend at least 10% of their financial resources to the agriculture sector and to the small industry sector. And yet, even that is not even doable because the banks will simply say, but your farmers and your small businessmen are not bankable, because we need really to help them. And in this case, we have a new approach to helping them towards consolidating their disparate small little land assets so that they can access their lands. But consolidation here does not mean consolidating land properties. We are now looking at consolidating the value chains in production. Consolidating, for instance, the use of fertilizer, or consolidating their marketing or their processing of a particular commodity, so that in that more consolidated arrangements, the farmers and our fishers will be able to better access our financial resources. And for government, it will be easier to help them in groups rather than help them one by one. You see, we have 10 to 11 million farmers and fisher folk in this sector. The country's population is roughly 110 million, and our population in the agriculture sector, farmers, we are now around 10 to 11 million, and we need to organize them. But among these 10 and 11 million farmers and fisher folk, do you know that less than 10%, meaning only roughly 1 million individual farmers are able to access government support? Okay, so most of our farmers and fishers are on their own, and we need to be able to improve our systems in order to help them. And that's really the focus of this Farm Consolidation Trust of Secretary Dar, by requiring our farmers and fishers to group together with the help, and we are requiring this as part of the, before we assist them, they have to have a professional farm manager and an accountant to help them manage the finances. The professional manager will bring in the trainings and the technologies, because we also have a lot of college graduates in agriculture. But sad to say, we haven't really put our policies and development programs well enough before, and we're now in the process of trying to approach it differently through this farm consolidation program of the department. And through that, we will be able to bring in the ideas of modernization, meaning we have so many new technologies developed in the Philippines to develop, agriculture, crops, and even livestock. We have many universities here, agriculture universities in various regions of this country. And the second idea here of industrialization is simply about bringing in the practices of our industries, better farm management, the use of mechanization, and the use of more modern techniques in resolving, for instance, the problems of food preservation, so that they can reach the markets fresh. Another item here is export promotion. This is simply a principle that says raise the quality of your products so that other countries can be you can reach the standards of other countries, even the industrialized countries, so that they become better markets for you. You can expand your markets if you can raise the quality of your products. And of course, the other boxes, infrastructure development is very important, because while in this country we say that we have 100,000 kilometers of farm to market roads, less than 5,000 kilometers of that are paved. We still did most of our 100,000 kilometers of farm to market roads are really dirt roads, and we need to develop that network also, so that the products of our farmers can be brought faster to the city centers, to the urban areas where we need to provide the food supplies. And if we have better infrastructure, then there's going to be a lesser or better, more efficient transport systems and lower cost of transport. And this is also one reason why we need a lot of, we have been lobbying with our legislators and to our executive department to provide more budgets to the sector. And we would like to, we have been working on this very hard, no? The last item here that I would like to also highlight is the roadmap development. What we mean by roadmap development is developing the industry potentials, the productive potentials of every one of our commodities that we're trying to help in this sector. We have identified 56 different crops and livestock and fishery products that we would like to focus on. Although right now, we have only 5 to 7 major crops and agriculture items that we have been working on. And it's about time that we also create more alternative products for our farmers and fishers to be able, for them to be able to have alternatives, especially that we know that cropping systems are not normally not year-round. There's always 3 to 4 months to planting rice, and then for those that are unirrigated, they have nothing more to do for the rest of the year. So a lot of things really to develop in our rural systems, and this interacts very much with the need to improve our regulatory processes we also need to highlight. I also need to highlight that we have a law in the Philippines focusing on the ease of doing business in order for us to encourage private sector investors to go into the agriculture sector. And what better way for them to come in to support our farm consolidation program. I believe that we can bring these elements together, and we are very much encouraged by the support that we have been receiving from President Duterte in this regard. And we do hope that we can also later on reach that level where many of our farmers are going to be able to have the capability to partner with farmers and farmers groups in your country, in Indonesia. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing important lessons from the Philippines on food security and resilience. I'm reading the Q&A box and I see already several questions for the Philippines, but we talk about that later. Now we welcome Professor Erizal Jamal from the Ministry of Agriculture Indonesia to present. The time is yours, Professor.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I really appreciate with all of our speakers this morning, Mike Weister, Professor Edmond, and Rodolfo Becerra. Thank you for already sharing with us about the regulatory impact assessment and also the Philippine experience related with the regulatory improvement. Maybe we need to discuss more detail about that later after this in some issue related with the how to separate between the as you know that sometimes is like in Indonesia we have a minister, there's a board also politician and with the policy, and other is our professional government officer. They working in the under minister. Sometimes there is how to make synchronize the policy come from the minister with the professional bureaucrat who working in under minister. This is one issue related we need to discuss more. So I will share with you my view about the current status and future direction of government regulatory regarding with agriculture development in Indonesia. I'm director for the plant variety protection and agriculture permit in under Ministry of Agriculture. I will start my presentation with the situation in Indonesia now after COVID. We consider with the concerning of the case of COVID, the total case still increased, but the recovery also increased, and Indonesia prioritized COVID-19 containment effort. And Indonesia is in the midst of developing vaccine, including cooperating with international institutions. And economic policy are focused to provide stimulus to pandemic and COVID-19, which will become the main challenge to economic development. What's the government efforts and program to recovery this situation? We have some program related to social protection, business incentive, or corporate financing, and sector and regional government, and small medium enterprise incentive, and more budget for the health incentive also. There are total around more than until 700 trillion rupiah already allocated by our government to have some activities start from the social protection, like condition case transfer program and other till expenditure for the COVID-19 handling for the health we already allocated by our government. Continue that. But we see that in general, start in August, we see that the consumer index indicates the consumer optimism has improved mainly due to the strengthening of the economic activity. And for people, mobility level has been higher in September compared on August. Nevertheless, the improvement has been slightly weaker in September since some regional like Jakarta has imposed the social restriction measure. So the government has been continuously following the development of COVID-19 case and imposing necessary measures to minimize the spread of virus. Continue that. What our strategy for the next years? The government already have some plan to allocate more budget for the health, social protection, infrastructure, and also for the food security. This is the important for us in Ministry of Agriculture, and there are some program related to the effort to increase the food production and support economic recovery through revitalization of the national food system. And we have some special program, we call it food estate in Kalimantan and also in North Sumatra and other provinces. Our minister already have declared that next year we hope that we have a special program for each province, that a special effort to increase our production and also to make our people have more income to comply with this COVID pandemic COVIDs. Continue that. And for the detail, the government regulation and policy, the Indonesian government through the Ministry of Agriculture provide extra support to keep the agriculture supply chains running by providing health protection, measure in port, custom and exercise office, quarantine, processing facility, and storage facility. Also, the government provide number of facilities to relaxation in regulation. This is more about my office. We have some relaxation in regulation related to the distribution of agriculture input and production. And the Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs use a suitable tool of economic diplomacy to ensure that exporting country keep their border open. In a recent declaration, Indonesia, along with the 12 other countries, including Singapore, Canada, and South Korea, has agreed to keep supply chains open. The government also eliminating a tariff on food import to maximize the economic welfare for our society. On the other side, we still concerned about the food quality and food safety. First, food safety. Continue that. As COVID-19 spread, the supply chain in Indonesia is experiencing a significant disruption due to reduction in processing capacity, close to road and port, and limited transportation. We slow down agriculture production and the distribution of food from producer to consumer. But we see that employment in agriculture was still increased by 2.23%. This is more people from the urban area come to the rural area and working in agriculture. So employment in agriculture increased, but the domestic include for the domestic agriculture supply but increased by 6.20, but and import decreased. The price of rice because of the scar of the product. In the average, the price are relatively stable, especially for the main staple food like rice and others. Continue that. And agriculture product supply chain, the movement of people from urban to rural area was reported at the start of COVID pandemic, and the Indonesian government implemented restricting on the movement of the people through the country. and the agriculture product transportation from rural area to urban market has been sustained disrupt. This is limited capacity of cold storage and others. And e-commerce mechanisms have developed by the young people to supply urban household with fresh agricultural product. And however, they are concerned about the limited regulation through this supply chain. This is our job in under Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Trade to make this regulation will working for the new initiative related with commerce. Continue that. And as our minister mentioned this morning in this place about our GDP growth in general in second quarter 2020, we see that in general our economic decrease and the growth is negative, and agriculture still growth positive 60.24 then, and this will make our economic still going well. Continue that, and in the quarter third, the same situation, but the agricultural growth is 2.15 positive, and others more decrease that, and this to make our activity in economic in the rural area still working well. Continue that, and what's our program under Ministry of Agriculture? There are 9 special program for the 2020 till 2024. We start from human resource development, facilitation in financing, infrastructure, and machinery, and increasing food production based on corporation, and development of competitiveness of our horticultural product, and also to aid value and competitiveness of plantation product, and increase population productivity and genetic quality of cattle and poultry, and accelerate of technology innovation and seedling production, and also strengthen quarantine service and accelerate export through the threefold export movement. We call it GreatX, and this is the 9-hour special program for the next 5 years. And related with the regulatory reform, and we have a special program this year under our President vision for Indonesia is to provide opportunity for broad investment of new employment, and it can be done by cutting off the investment barrier. As Dr. Edmund mentioned about the easy doing business released by World Bank in 2019, our rank is still low compared with the other countries in Asia. This is one of the situation, and our president already have some instruction to have a deregulation because of some of our regulations still overlapping, complicated, that put our parties in at risk. Our president mentioned that we must stop this, and we have some special effort this year through omnibus law to simplify 77 law offering more than 1,200 articles in this law, and the government just issued that job creation law, law number 11 years this year. We hope that through this effort, we can make our regulation in Indonesia more simple, and can give more easily doing business in Indonesia. Continue that. I can give you one example with the plantation sector. Before we have the law of job creation, you can see that the chart about when someone want to start a business in the plantation.
there are too many places he missed to fill about the data information, and too many things must to do before he can operate with the plantation activity. In our experience in the future, in the previous time, need more than two years to finish all of this step, start to business in plantation. But after the job creation law, you can continue that. After the law of job creation, we can finish that in 5-day work. You can imagine that from the 2 years, you can make that to be 5 work day. But we make to more systematic for the environmental permit, cultivation right, and related with the local government and governor and district. So we make that to be more clear. We make that, we call that permit based on the risk. So every permit that everyone want to get that, we give that based on the risk of the activity. Risk, we see that from the related with the environmental, risk related with the health and others. So based on that, we make some classification of the permit. There is the need permit just to suit with some standard and others. So and other only you just give just to see to make it easily, especially for the small and medium enterprise. Continue that. We can see that for the medium and small enterprise development with the Ministry of Agriculture. Before the law of job creation, for the medium and small enterprise trade as is the same as with the large company in the licensing process. And the need for the active role of the medium and small enterprise to processing licensing. But the impact, only the small part of the medium and small enterprise are officially registered, and they are difficult to access various facility provided by the government by financing or technology. After law of job creation, only need for the licensing, we call that you start to start activity for licensing. If it has to meet with standard or fulfillment with a company by the government. So after the law job creation, the government role is more dominant to providing assistance and empowerment for the medium and enterprise. This is the change after we have a regulation change in some our law. Continue that. And this morning, our minister mentioned about the too many regulation in Indonesia, as we call that along 2000 till 2015, around 15,000 regulation and more than 60% in ministerial level. Continue that. And when we see that more detail about among the ministry office in Indonesia, agriculture and plantation and livestock include for the big one, the big one for the produce of regulation in Indonesia. So we are under Ministry of Agriculture now, try to make how to make that our regulation is more effective and selective. Not so we have some program related to that. Continue that. There are 4 that we under our program now, and some we working together with INSLIC and other part
include for the regulatory impact assessment. First, we make a mapping of the regulatory drafting process in under Ministry of Agriculture. This is the basic way we know that who is the actor of the regulatory drafting and other the process, and we know that all of the complete process. After that, we formulate several tool to comply with the good regulation, include for the regulatory impact assessment. We working together with INSLIC and other in this year to develop some tool related to that. And we hope we have a special effort to make more dominant planet regulated through agriculture legislative program. This is so we have that, we make that to more plain regulatory program, and we form a solid regulatory reform team in under Ministry of Agriculture. So we working together, and this is will be continue improvement the process of our regulatory reform in agriculture. That is all of my presentation this morning. Thank you, Nat.
Thank you very much, Professor Rizal. Thank you for all key speakers for sharing useful lessons and insights and experience with us. I see several questions coming from participants, so we will move to the Q&A session now. As a reminder to all participants, you can still submit questions through the Q&A box in your Zoom. The first question is for the Ministry of Agriculture Indonesia. So this is concerning the conversion of agricultural land issue. What concrete actions or steps that the ministry will take, or maybe already taken, to overcome the conversion of agricultural land to non-agricultural land? This issue is one of the issues we used as a case during our RIA training and coaching for the Law Bureau Ministry of Agriculture Indonesia. So please, perhaps Professor Rizal can answer the question.
Thank you, Nat. After we know that after we declare about the law of number 11 about the job creation 2020, now we are ongoing process to make some special regulation related with the agriculture activity. We have government law related include for the land conversion. We working together with the local government to make some regulation related with the land conversion to working more efficient in the future. First, we need to what we call that support from local parliament to declare about the local regulatory or to working more effective to in issue about the land conversion. This is our special effort working together with Ministry of relative Ministry of Plantation and also Ministry of Forest and also Ministry of Land to make local regulatory to working well to protect our special for the paddy land or from the conversion activity. This is I can answer about that.
Thank you, Professor. So another question, we have a couple of questions concerning regulatory impact assessment, but I saw from the Q&A box, Dr. Pitzer have answered several questions online. Yeah? So I will move to the questions for the Philippines. There are two questions for Professor Edmund and one question for Mr. Rodolfo. For Professor Edmund, the question is, in the Philippines, how is the division between the political policies taken or regulations taken by the ministries, or maybe comes from the ministers, and the policies or regulations implementing by the bureaucrats? So how far is the influence of the ministers towards towards the regulations or policies that already drafted by the bureaucrats? Sorry. Yeah, okay. Please, Professor Edmund.
Okay. Anyway, I've been keeping track of the Q&A box as well. And I think this is very much related to several of the other questions posted. Perhaps the better way to approach it is to distinguish policy work from policy implementation. And of course, what usually happens is that the policy making is with the political leaders, and obviously policy implementation includes the career officials, no, or the ones who are always in government. There's always have to be some kind of cooperation between the career officials and the political leaders. Political leaders have to listen to the career officials, but there are also instances where only the political leaders can see in a broader perspective what some of the career officials don't see. And there are tons of examples in this regard, from decentralization to agriculture and so on. And this plays right into the heart of what Dr. Pfister mentioned earlier, which is the whole of government approach. So there has to be a way to marry the two together. But I have to admit, in response to the question, that there is always going to be a division between the way the policymakers, the way the political leaders think, and the way the career officials think. At the end of the day, the public response, no? And therefore the clamor from the public for political leaders, the policymakers, to respond, no, will ultimately be useful, so that in the end, both the career officials and political leaders respond accordingly. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor. The second question is Vietnam. Vietnam is considered more progressive than the Philippines in agriculture from your presentation. Do you know the reasons why? So what do you think about Indonesia? What should Indonesia do to avoid left behind in this race?
I don't think Indonesia is left behind. I've seen the presentation of your Excellency Minister for Agriculture. In fact, it's quite revealing that the contraction is affecting the Philippines so much compared to Indonesia. Because at the end of the day, in cases or in situations like this pandemic, countries like individuals always tend to close its borders, no? And therefore there has to be some kind of self-reliance, no, that a country enjoys, or the capacity for self-reliance should be there. Unfortunately, in the case of the Philippines, we're very much dependent on trade. We're very much dependent on importing so much of what we need, including the basic necessities that ultimately impact on the way we are able to address or manage the impact of this pandemic. What's the reason why it's been like that in the case of the Philippines? Well, of course, the political reason is always there, but of course, that's the ultimate culprit. But precisely because of this political condition or challenges, there is a fragmented policy making and policy implementation in the Philippines. So it remains a challenge, but I don't know whether it's right to say that if there's anything good with what the pandemic brought here in the Philippines, is that we're now able to realize the significance of agriculture and the significance of us being able to be more self-reliant.
Thank you so much, Professor. We have one more question for Mr. Rodolfo Visera. How's the relations between the national government and local government in the Philippines in pushing for agricultural development in Philippines?
Oh, thank you. Actually, we have had a decentralization law way back in 1992. And that's actually one of the biggest challenges for our Department of Agriculture, because we were among the first whose agencies have been devolved to the local government units. And most of the regional staff then, I think we were halved. I think half of the department were transferred to the local government units, to the provincial and municipal government units. And but since then and up till now, we haven't had a very good relations in terms of working out the programs of the national government towards the local government units. We have we have regional offices that are supposed to deal with the distribution of our funds for programs to be implemented by our local government units. But you know, I mean, based on experience, and I have been also in Congress for over 2 decades. I've been watching this from that side, from the legislative side. The relationship between our executive department, local government units, and the national has not been that good in terms of coordination. And that is one of the things that our new secretary now, Secretary William Dar, is trying to cure. At the same time, we would like also to highlight the fact that because of this dysfunction of relations between local government units and the National Agriculture Department, most of our farmers have been left behind, physically as well as institutionally, as well as in terms of the development programs that are supposed to reach our farmers. Why? Because most of our local government units, our provincial and municipal governments, have not adjusted, have not adapted better ways to reach out to their own farmers in their own communities. In short, if you look at the ordinary municipal government or the ordinary province, for instance, they don't have a good agriculture development or crop development or livestock development program in their respective areas. And they always look at the national level, the ministry level, for guidance. And yet, they do have the resources in their respective areas, except that they have not really placed a lot of emphasis on better strategies to develop their respective sectors, their own crops, for instance. I have yet to see a provincial government developing a special program for rice, for corn, for mangoes, for papaya. They all look at the national level, but in this regard, we really need to improve the way we implement our programs from here. And the initial area of effort is for us to help our farmers group together. And from there, we will help them link up with their local government units, as well as the local financial institutions, the banks, the rural banks, for them to be able to access more funds. But because of that program that will now encourage the professional agriculturists to link up with the lowly educated farmers in their communities, organizing them for better management and for access to better technologies as well as markets. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Rodolfo Visera. We will have two more questions regarding RIA or maybe OECD, if Dr. Fitzer can answer before I close the Q&A session. First is how RIA could help to reduce the existing overlapping regulations. Yeah, I think that's first. And the second is, do ASEAN communities has already the same level of playing field in terms of regulations to induce healthy regional market in ASEAN? If not, then how to achieve that? Is there any lessons learned from OECD community on the efforts of regulatory reform for better regional market economy? Probably Dr. Fitzer can answer this, or maybe from ADB. I don't know whether. Okay. I think Dr. Fisher left already. So if there's any from OECD, sorry, from ADB or maybe from other panelists can answer this question.
Let me try to answer that. You know, RIA, of course, is a tool. And let's not mistake it as some kind of a policy itself and therefore a solution. But it's a tool that will help us find a solution to many issues, among others, determine what the limitations are and what causes the limitations of such regulations, which then could allow us to could direct us, to limitation to what causes such issues or problems, like probably resources, or could be institutional limitations, could even be coordination between the different agencies that are supposed to be engaged in the same or related regulations. As to the question whether ASEAN countries are already on equal footing, I'm not sure whether there's any particular region where countries will all be in equal footing. Perhaps the main challenge and the objective that ASEAN countries should be looking into is more on how one can complement each other, because each ASEAN country has its own strength and weakness. And if there's a way by which collaboration and coordination could be promoted further, then I'm certain that it's not only better trade relations and interaction can be accomplished, but even other collaborative endeavors can be explored.
Okay, sorry. Thank you for your reply, Professor Edmund. I think we are running out of time here. There are still a couple of questions that we need to answer, but we can answer it directly to the persons. And I see also a couple of questions already answered by by some of the panelists online. Yeah. So thank you very much. Again, thank you for all the key speakers for your fruitful insights and sharing of lessons. We expect that we can have more of sharing experience and good practices regarding regulations in the future. And hopefully, once the international travel reopen, God knows when, we will have the COVID-19 vaccine. We will meet directly or offline meetings. If you have any questions regarding the presentations, please contact us after the webinar, and especially for the OECD, Dr. Fitzer already mentioned that you can contact the OECD office directly. Again, thank you so much for all the key speakers and participants for your contribution today, and I give back to the MC, Ms. Ocha.
Thank you very much, Ms. Natalie Leonhardt, as the moderator of today's workshop, and all of the keynote speakers that has given such an insightful performance. Before we close up today's workshop, we have some pollings that aim to improve our performance in the next workshop. To all of the participants, you would see the polls on your screen right now. Please fill in the polls and click submit once you're done. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for your answers. Ladies and gentlemen, to officially close today's event, we'd like to hear a closing speech from the Cold Water International, Ms. Kavaldov, who is the director of NSLIC project. To Ms. Kavaldov, please, the time is yours.
Well, hello, everyone. Selamat pagi. Thank you very much for your participation today. To our minister, ambassador, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, we are just very pleased at Cold Water International and speaking on behalf of the NSLIC project here in Indonesia to be able to support this event today, and grateful to the Government of Canada, Global Affairs Canada, for their support to make this happen. The NSLIC project has been very involved in supporting an enabling environment for business and working closely with government partners around the regulatory environment. And definitely we see the importance of efficient and effective and good regulatory practices to support economic growth. We are just, again, want to say thank you to everyone for your participation today. The objective of this workshop was to share inputs and ideas and to learn from good examples of other regulatory practices from other countries, as well as from other organizations and institutions who have experience in this space. And I believe that we have met this objective today. I want to echo a few words that were spoken by the minister today around how important regulations are to boosting the economy as a pillar of the economy, and that they can also contribute to peace and security. He spoke also about the importance of harmonizing regulations and agricultural regulations, which we are talking about here today, with other regulations and the need for that to be operationalized successfully. We see regulations also key to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, and that best practices in regulatory reform require a whole of government approach, as regulations are only as good as the systems in place and depend on those existing institutions for support. So I would like to close today again by saying a great thank you to everyone for your participation. Also, Bu Natalie and our MC and NSLIC staff and so many others, our translators, all of those who participated to make this a valuable event. And I do look forward, as has been shared already, for further discussion, be that continuing by webinars where we can bring people together easily from a vast network of ASEAN, or face-to-face when the situation permits. But again, we're so very pleased to have had your participation today. Special thanks again to all of the speakers, and thank you much. Thank you very much. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Terima kasih. Thank you very much, Ms. Cavaldo, for the speech. Ladies and gentlemen, now we're finally at the end of the agenda. We'd like to thank all of the officials, the panelists, and the participants for attending this workshop. May this workshop bring up insights for all of us. There is no impression without your presence. My name is Ocha Hafifa, and I am signing out.
Tanah airku tidak kulupakan, kan terkenang selama hidupku. Biarpun saya pergi jauh, tidak akan hilang dari kalbu. Tanahku yang ku cintai, engkau ku hargai. Walaupun banyak negeri ku jalani, yang masyhur permai di kata orang, tetapi kampung dan rumahku, di sanalah ku rasa senang. Tanah kota ku lupakan, engkau ku
Panitia nggak foto nih.
Okay, recording stop.